Hey y'all, it's Colin Charles. I'm gonna post this on both Enoch Marketing and Life of Logos this week. I had a dream, and I feel like this dream was so compelling and so interesting that I just want to remember it. So I'll give you the backstory and all of the thoughts that go along with it. But as you can tell, this is not going to be something that I promote, much like I promote anything else. So we don't have the mic, we don't have the lights, we have a different angle. We're just talking for a moment. I was having a conversation with one of my friends, Kenny. If you guys are on the Life of Logos channel, you know Kenny from our earliest videos. And we tend to get into some very interesting conversations and sometimes some very esoteric conversations. Oftentimes circulate around God and who God is, what's the ins and outs of the faith. And though I have my own critiques of Kenny's perspective on God, that's not the point of this. We end up getting into a discussion where we were discussing the possibly mythological, possibly very realistic gods of the area that we know to be the Middle East, Egypt. Because the Bible does mention, the Prince of Persia and all of these Egyptian priests who were conducting miracles by the power of these Egyptian deities and whatnot, which would make one think that the God of the Hebrews was the God that we know as the God. But then, for some reason, in light of all of those premortal entities and whatnot, I really wanted to zero in on Jesus, right? And, if you've been following me, a lot of my opinions and a lot of my calling, a lot of my interests and desires are all circulated around taking care of people. And I really do feel like Jesus was the epitome of taking care of people and loving people and living for something greater than yourself, even to the point of death. And you can see all of that even if you don't acknowledge his divinity. Because he's just an example. He's an exemplary human being who led well, who prioritized the right things, that helped people, that didn't let himself get sucked up into comfort or greed or wrath. None of that. He just held his own. And he stayed authentic. And he loved people. And whether or not you want to argue his divinity or whatever, or the dogma that surrounds religion, that example of someone who cares for someone who can do nothing for them, someone who continues to care for someone even though they are persecuting him, is incredible. And when I look at life and see the evil in this world, I realize that if we are to return evil for evil, the world never actually gets better. It's the choice that we have to take to make the choice of good over evil. When met with evil, we have to respond with good, and that is the only way we're actually going to be able to get out of the situation that the world has presented us. So, with all that being said, I went to bed thinking about it. Like, what would it mean to actually be like Jesus? To have that same spirit in him that is in us. What would that look like? And I had a dream, and all of that was to lead to this, a dream that I need to remember. And that is why I'm recording this right now. So, in this dream, I was with a group, if you will. It kind of felt like one of those trainings that I've been in where you have, so many people, you're going through stuff, and it really ends up becoming like a group therapy session, which is interesting. And we were all given a task that something was going to happen and 50 people needed to get on a boat or to safety. We'll say it is to safety because it makes the end of the dream make more sense. And we go about our way and we find this building and we're like, hey, this is the right building. This is the building we need to be in. But it only gave space for 35 people. So the next arm of the exercise, the first arm was to find the place. The next arm was to figure out who gets to stay and who has to go. And somebody would have to die in order for the others to live, which then becomes a conflict with human nature. Again, if you've been following the Enoch marketing side of things, we've been talking about human nature quite a bit. But in this particular case, we are in this dream having to reconcile with human nature. And then to add more complexity to this exercise that we're doing in this dream, everyone has an agenda that only they knew about. So again, to recap, we're in a training exercise. The first part of the training exercise was to find this safe house. The second part is when you find out the safe house doesn't have enough space or resources and somebody of that group of 50 has to die. How then do you react? All the while you have your own agenda. So I had my agenda card and I looked at it and it said, at all costs, Alex must live. I was like, that's interesting. I don't even know who Alex is. It's just a person in the dream. So we get into this safe house and we start setting up and everything was great. Now, we knew from the beginning of this exercise that something was supposed to happen and we were to get to this safe house. And we were at the safe house and everything was actually good for a little bit. I began to figure out who this Alex person was. And I realized that I would have liked to live, but it's more important that this Alex person lives, whomever that is. So we're bipping and bopping, having a good time. And then out of nowhere, there's a warning that goes off. And only I could hear it. And it said, the flood or whatever calamity is happening now, you have to be the one to get everybody to safety. But right as I realized that it's happening now in real time, I looked out of one of the windows of this safe house and there were thousands of people coming in. Because it turns out this exercise wasn't an exercise at all, and it was an actual event. So I, in this dream, spring into action. And I started to get the people I knew. And I was like, hey, listen, this is no longer a drill. This is happening right now. You have to get to safety. Go, go, go. And all the while, these people are closing in who actually need protection in this safe house that we're training in. I got all the people in there, and the last person I found was Alex. And we were in this, I was getting people in, and I realized that not everyone was going to make it. So I throw Alex in there, and I push him behind the lockbox, so he'll be safe. But I'm still in the space between the crowds and the door. And in this last part of the dream, I remember trying to close the door and the door latch breaking. So there was no way to prevent the crowds from getting in. So instead, I went out into the crowd. And people were bringing me money. People were bringing me whatever they could. They were bringing me like pieces of silver. And they were just trying to get to a point where they were safe, where they could live. And instead of being overwhelmed or angry or intimidated by this crowd, I remember just feeling moved by them. like I loved them. And something inside of me broke to see that they weren't going to make it. And there was this little girl who just showed up in the dream. I think that her mother like pushed her into my arms and asked me to save her or something. And she wrapped her arms around my neck and just buried her like cheek on my cheek. And I knew at that moment that we were all going to perish together. And somehow, for some reason, in that moment, in this dream, I would have preferred to perish with the innocent people than to be swept away into safety with people who didn't even know that the situation was real. I was sympathetic to the pain of the people. And that was such an odd dream. But I think that's what Christ would have wanted. Because he did come down to earth, and he did dwell amongst the people, even in their perishing, to the point where he did die, so that some could be saved. It's just a dream. I'm not trying to put any level of interpretation on it. I'm not trying to make this some sort of like, hey, I'm a Christian, follow me. I'm a very bad Christian who doesn't like dogma at all and is incredibly rational thinker and and I'm very skeptical about everything, to include the faith. So don't extol me as your Christian example. I'm not. If you want an example, go look at Christ because he did it. I struggle with every bit of philosophy and religion. But I think if I had to choose a moment and live so others may live, even if it means the end of myself, I think that would have been a life well lived. I just need to remember this dream. Take it out if you want. Most of y'all are never going to see this video, and I would be surprised if it got 2 views. This has been a vulnerable moment with Colin. Have a great day, I guess. And we'll see you.